you're alone with your thoughts 24/7. You know exactly who you are when no one's around. You know exactly if the facade you're putting on for the people around you is bullshit. You know exactly what you do first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You're there for all of it. Okay, people, welcome back. So I am currently recording a two-part, retrospective on my Silverback Summit talk in November of 2025. It's currently May 2026. It's about 6 months ago, on anxiety. And in the first part, you don't need to watch that for this video to make sense, but it will probably provide more value if you watch that first. That's the foundation, not required, contextually relevant. I wanted to do a bit more of a reflection on a few key points from that lecture, because this comes up all the time. And because it comes up for me all the time, I assume that means it probably comes up for other practitioners all the time. And that means that if it's being raised by patients, then this is something that appears to be relevant for a lot of people. And if it's not relevant for you, then that's something that you should be stoked and proud of. Like if you're like, I've never had an issue with anxiety, I've never been anxious, it's just not a thing. You're doing well. That's awesome. But we absolutely do have a problem with a lot of people living in a state of learned fear, chronic fear, unjustified fear, chronic stress, generalized anxiety, social anxiety disorder, neurosis, which was Carl Jung's term for essentially becoming a snowflake, being avoidant, being passive, being timid, whatever you want to call it. Whatever label someone wants to slap on it, it doesn't change what it is, which is a state that a lot of people are uncomfortably living in their minds. And I think anxiety is a good word for it. I think chronic stress is more relevant, but each to their own, whatever. It's semantics. And sometimes these things can have a biological, really strong foundation. And the point that I want to make is that no one's anxiety at a generalized chronic point is being caused by one specific thing. You might think it's one specific thing, but that's probably at most 80% of it. Because the rest of it is or are the maladaptive coping mechanisms that come with it, the outcome of living with it, all of the things that go alongside it that are suboptimal, that are contributors or multiplying factors. Because if that one thing that you're worried about magically went away tomorrow, you would still be the person who was worried about that all the time. You'd probably just find a new thing to worry about. And if we look at people who have issues with anxiety and you say, what's the main thing you're anxious about? If you asked them 5 years ago, it would have been something else. It's shifting of a focus. There's a foundational issue. So this can be rooted in biology. It can be rooted in endocrinology. There can be a pregnenolone deficiency. There can be hypothyroidism. Both of these things will dysregulate the cortisol response, the adrenal response to stress, upregulation of adrenaline, upregulation of cortisol, downregulation of cortisol receptors, so cortisol resistance. All of these things will occur. And sometimes the most important foundational pillar of this can be actually comprehensively reviewing the blood work, going through the systems that are off, and finding out that there's been a massive issue here that needs to be rectified. And when you rectify 80% of the issue with a hormone, then the other 20% in terms of effort level to resolve it is relatively easy. But a lot of cases aren't like that. So if there's a biological issue, I think the way that we have to look at this pragmatically is that we can't objectively determine if someone's anxiety is purely psychological. Can't do it. But we can objectively rule out if it's biological. So that would default to a psychological diagnosis. The problem is that people default to that without testing things properly. They don't properly test for hypothyroidism. They don't properly test for neurosteroid levels. They don't properly optimize the testosterone protocol. So that's an important point to assess. You can be the best builder with the best materials and the best whatever, but if the foundation's faulty and the house keeps falling down, it's going to be much more efficient and effective to correct the foundation than to continue to try to build this thing on a faulty foundation. But if the issue is not with the foundation, it's with the building of the house, you can bring in all the best concrete slabs in the world that you want, but you're still going to have to build that house on top of it. So we can't solve psychological issues biologically, including by taking pills. But we can't also solve biological issues psychologically. You can go to all the talk therapy you want, but if you are hypothyroid, low pregnenolone, low testosterone, you could go from feeling terrible to feeling slightly maybe okay with it. But you're not going to feel good. But the part that's more prevalent and more problematic because it's less straightforward is when potentially the endocrine issue created the foundation for the mental health to be suboptimal, but then it hasn't been reprogrammed because the hormone isn't going to reprogram it for you. It's just going to give you the foundation for you to reprogram it yourself. Because hormones don't just push up neurotransmitters. They create the context and the foundation for neurotransmitters to fire properly in the right circumstance, under the right stimulus. So it brings everything into balance. But if your life is a mess and you don't have any core skills and you're watching yourself mess it up in real time, you can optimize your hormones until the cows come home, but you're still going to feel like your life is a mess because of you, and that's because it's true. If you've just started TRT, it is completely normal to feel overwhelmed and confused. There's a lot of new territory to cover, and there is a lot of conflicting information. I wrote TRT 101 so that you can have everything that you need to know in an instruction manual in one place that you can refer back to, that you can have all the questions answered before they even come up. TRT 101 is my best practice approach for TRT from start to finish, and it contains everything that you need to avoid all the challenges and pitfalls that I've seen come up in my clients over the last 5 years. You can check it out via the link below. So a lot of getting out of an anxious mindset is basically creating a person and a life that doesn't make you fearful, that makes you feel confident, and then actually kind of overcoming some adversity and some challenges and kind of working through this stuff for a prolonged period of time to become the person that ultimately is not afraid of the world. And that's hard, and that's a lot of work. And you have to attack multiple systems, like I mentioned in the previous lecture, to bring all that into balance. And a lot of the time, as I said it with exercise, but I'll say it with everything relating to mental health. The highest ROI thing is probably the thing that you're neglecting that you don't want to do. It's probably that. That's probably the highest ROI thing. But the part that's challenging is the further you are off track, the more work you have to put in to get on track. And that's why it's important that when people are really off track, that you meet them where they're at. Step one for someone could be just going to the gym 3 times a week, not even doing anything, but just walking in the gym door, doing 2 minutes on the elliptical and leaving because they're creating a routine. Part of someone's first step towards losing weight and getting their nutrition in order could be just prepping meals and sticking to those meals that they've prepped. It could just be learning to cook one thing. Or it could just be learning about food and making better choices on the menus they're using. Like, there are small steps to take. If someone's an alcoholic, they're not a failure if they reduce their alcohol by 80% because they didn't take it down to 0 yet. It's about measuring how far you've come. So if you've got a long way to go, then you have to create more milestones along that path. Otherwise, you're just going to feel even worse about yourself because you're now making a massive downward comparison because you're like, well, I should be so much more, but I'm not. So all of this stuff needs to be handled on like an ongoing basis, and it needs to be looked at as something that testosterone and hormone optimization is a tool to say, we've now corrected all the foundational deficits that were causing this thing to go off track, but now you've got to get it back on track. But the reassurance you have, if someone does your blood work properly, they look at things comprehensively, they actually care about your health and they do the right thing by you and they assess all systems and they do it properly, they're going to give you the peace of mind to say, everything's handled on this end. You just now need to go and show up and do all those things that maybe you tried before that didn't work for you, and now they will. And then you're going to make progress. And once you start to make progress, then you start to feel like someone that you're proud of. Because you've got momentum, you're moving forward. Even if you're not at the goal, you're still moving forward. And then once you create the narrative that you're the guy that stopped doing all that shit and got out of the hole and you did it with your own effort and your own work, that's something to be proud of. That makes people less anxious. And then ultimately that builds competence. And then you become more confident because now you're starting to do things that are working for you and you're like, hang on, I set my mind to something and then I did it. And then I set my mind to the next thing, and then I did that. So when you walk into the grocery store or you're about to order your food at a restaurant, you're going to be less anxious. You're going to be more confident in yourself. And it's not just directly related to those interactions, it's everything overall, because you're alone with your thoughts 24/7. You know exactly who you are when no one's around. You know exactly if the facade you're putting on for the people around you is bullshit. You know exactly what you do first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You're there for all of it. So if you are intrinsically and internally proud of the person that you are for overcoming things that are challenging, that creates all the things that are on the opposite end of the spectrum to anxiety. It creates confidence and resilience and perseverance, bravery, courage. All of those things are the traits and the values and the attitudes that someone like that has. You just have to start, and then you just have to keep doing it. And then you need to be the person who's kind of a little bit down the road of that journey. And that's where the magic happens. It's once you've made some meaningful progress that you can see. Because other people see it first. It's like weight loss. You see it last. But once you can see it, then I wouldn't say it's easy. I wouldn't say it's effortless. But the resistance goes down. Like there's less gravity. And then it's just a matter of time. Consistency, discipline. Understanding that things are not going to solve themselves overnight. Understanding that you're not going to go from being afraid and timid to being Giga Chad in 6 weeks, 8 weeks, even 6 months? Not gonna happen. But over time, you can become more like the person who is the best version of yourself, which has become a kind of cliche, but what else is the upward goal? You can't be the best version of someone else. So it's true. So the best high-level overall recommendation I have when people come to me about anxiety is to make self-development your number one hobby. And you make it your priority, even when it sucks and it's work. And then over time, it becomes a hobby. When you can get to the point that going to the gym is something you look forward to rather than something you have to do, makes it a hell of a lot easier. If you can look forward to cooking and eating your own food, hell of a lot easier. Doesn't make it effortless, hell of a lot easier though. So if you can get a real passion for learning and for spending time outside and doing your mobility work and getting your steps in and being proud of yourself for all of these things, and then exercise starts to feel good, and then all of the things that you realize are kind of moving your body forward, you kind of start to get addicted to in a good way, and you kind of start to go, hang on, I don't want to go out and have a drink because then that's going to make me feel worse, and I actually like how I feel. I don't want to have a buzz for a couple of hours if I'm going to feel just toxic and crappy for a day or two. Like, that's not worth it because I feel good. That's progress. That's a win. So hope you guys found that useful, and I'll see you guys all on the next one.
But you'd also learn things like the fragility of human life. You'd learn to tell the people that you love them. You'd learn to maybe sit down and enjoy spending time with your wife or your girlfriend when you're having coffee or having dinner. Smell the flowers. Nothing about getting hit at a high impact velocity taught you that. It was the experience of having a near-death moment in your life and getting through it. All right, so thank you everyone.